Welcome to Talk Across America. I'm Doug Miles, and we're here in beautiful Sarasota, Florida.
Joining us now, great to welcome a man who has written a book, kind of reissued a book that was came out actually back in 1973. Very fascinating and provocative book as well. It's called The Book of Highs, 255 Ways to Alter Your Consciousness Without Drugs. We're joined today by Edward Rosenfeld on the telephone. And Edward, good to talk with you. How are you?
I'm fine, Doug. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good to have a chance to talk with you for a couple of minutes. And I had a chance to look through the book. First of all, that's a great cover on that. That brings me back. I was a kid around 1973, so I remember those kind of pop art pictures. That cover on that kind of brings back that era to me a little bit.
Well, that's what we tried to do with the illustrations, was embrace the sense that the book had come from another time but was still valid now.
Yeah, it just has that kind of look, that psychedelic, like we said, the colors and all that. People around that time know what I'm not talking about, but hopefully they'll check out the book after we talk today. But first of all, I guess you wrote it back in 1973 and you updated it a little bit now, but what's that been like for you? I know you've had a great career since then. You wrote a newsletter all about computing, intelligence. You've had a great career, but it kind of bookends your career now, doesn't it, this book?
Well, I hope it's just one of many bookends. However, I actually started writing the book in the late 60s when they started outlawing drugs. And I realized that the people who were outlawing the drugs had never taken the drugs, and they had this view that the drugs were all bad. And I thought, well, some of these drugs just alter consciousness, and they're neither good nor bad. And I thought they can't outlaw consciousness, so I decided to put together a compendium, and I was very fortunate that there was a lot of scholarly research in the field of altered states of awareness. And so I was able to capitalize on that and do my own research and put together the original book, which eventually was published in 1973 and did quite well in the early and mid-'70s. And then 2 years ago, the current publisher, Workman, approached me and said, wow, the environment has changed so much, and drug laws are changing, and we were in the middle of an opioid crisis. This would be a good time to redo the book. And I thought, wow, that's a great idea. So some things have been taken out. More than 200 of the original highs are still in there, and several, especially in the area of electronics and computing. Electronic dance music didn't exist then, and things like that. They have been added to the new edition, which was published today, I'm happy to say.
Yeah, as we talked today, it just came out, and you mentioned the drug laws changing. I know down here in our part of the world, Sarasota, Tampa Bay, Florida, pot dispensaries are a big issue. They're going to open, I think, a few in our area. From what I've read recently, I know California, Colorado, Washington, several states have already done that. Whether it's good or bad, that's for people to decide. But it has been a big change in the last 10 to 15 years, hasn't it?
It has, and I think what was bad, and I can be categorical about that, is that in the past, marijuana and other drugs were part of being dealt with by law enforcement, the legal system, the judicial system, and the incarceration systems. And this was not good. And that war on drugs didn't succeed, and billions, to quote Carl Sagan, were spent on it with very, very bad results. So I don't think getting high is bad necessarily. It can be, and some people can handle drugs, and some people can't handle a lot of things. But I'm just glad to see that the laws are now changing and that the federal government seems to be saying that it's up to the states to decide what they want to do.
You mentioned before opioid crisis. We've heard that. A lot of that, not necessarily marijuana, deals mostly, I think, with pain prescriptions, right, that people are getting hooked on and causing a lot of problems. So it's not just marijuana we're talking about with the opioid crisis, right?
So we have examples around the world that we can look to for different ways to treat these scourges that are real problems and real difficulties for, hundreds of thousands of people terrible situation, the opioid crisis.
Yeah. Hopefully that will get more under control. Let's talk about a few of the 255 ways. You mentioned more than 200 are still in the book. When you first put this together, how did you come up with, how did you discover those? I know you said you did research on it, but give maybe a story or two of how you found some of these ways. And again, these are without drugs at all, these ways to get alter your consciousness.
Well, the very first entry in the book is concentration, which is all about focusing and being able to direct your consciousness. And I think many of the ways that I outline in the book are based on that. I came to some of this through my own experiences. I had studied and practiced Zen Buddhism, and one of my favorite highs, people ask me my favorite highs, there's a part of Zen Buddhism that has to do with sitting meditation, where you sit with your legs crossed, but there's also another part of Zen meditation where you walk. And even though I don't practice Zen meditation anymore, I do walk virtually every day when I'm not doing interviews. And walking for me is an altered state. And I just love it. I think it's wonderful. Another thing that comes from some of the spiritual disciplines is alterations of breathing, or just observing your breath, watching your inhalations and your exhalations. And people have found that paying attention to their breathing can change their state and change the way they're feeling, and it's even been effective in some cases of post-traumatic stress disorder. So there are a lot of ways in which altered states can be used positively, and then of course there are also some states that are negative, and other states that are neither one nor the other but require some consideration before they're undertaken.
I guess in a sense, it's kind of, reading through some of the 255 ways. A lot of them deal with, like you said, exercise or finding something you like to do. And if you're enjoying yourself, that kind of puts you in a bit of a, different state of consciousness. If you're enjoying your life, you kind of get a high on that, right? So, I mean, it's almost anything you enjoy doing, provided it's not illegal or hurting somebody, they can do that as well, right? Make yourself
That's
feel
absolutely
higher.
True.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Andrew Weil writes about in the foreword from the original book, which we've reprinted word for word, even these decades later, he talks about the fact that we're hardwired for these altered states. When we're infants, we rock ourselves into a different state of consciousness. When we're toddlers and we get up on our feet, what do? We jump around, we dance, we swirl like whirling dervishes, and we're excited. And so it's these states that are built into us that we naturally gravitate toward, that aren't difficult. I mean, somebody mentioned to me earlier in the day, well, you should get a trampoline. And I said, well, trampoline is something you really have to consider because you can fall off a trampoline. But basically, when you're jumping up and down with some care, you're generally not going to hurt yourself. Yeah. So there are a lot of different ways to approach this that don't have any harm.
Well, again, it's a republished book, but really a lot of new information as well. The Book of Highs, 255 Ways to Alter Your Consciousness Without Drugs. And we've been talking with Edward Rosenfeld today. And Edward, you have a website you want to direct people to, get more information on the book?
It's pretty simple. It's Book of Highs, all one word, BOOKOFHIGHS.com.
Great. Edward,
and there's a lot of extra information there.
Pleasure talking to you, and hopefully we can do it again. But enjoyed the book, and I know our audience will as well. We'll post a link on our website.
I'd like that, Doug. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us today on Talk Across America. Please visit our website at dougmilesmedia.com for more great interviews and content. And if you're interested in any of the books we talk about on the program, please click the Amazon link on our website. It helps support the podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again real soon here from beautiful Sarasota, Florida.
I'm Stan Brock. 30 years ago, I formed Remote Area Medical to help people overseas. But then we found generations of families in America, isolated by poverty from the health care they need. Together, we can take dental, vision, and medical help to 1 million adults and their kids, right here at home in the United States of America.